Good afternoon and thank you. Let me just make some correction to the presentation, which I don't want to be retained as all factual. First of all, I used to be in the UN as Under Secretary General. I'm not. I left many, many years ago. And second, I will talk to you not about what I can tell you about the culture of peace and diplomacy and all the rest. I will tell you simply my life adventure. I'll give you, at the beginning, just a couple of hints of what my life adventure was. I suppose that you have an idea of what the Middle East is all about, right? And I suppose you have heard the name Hezbollah, a terrorist organization who took Western hostages 20 years ago. You're too young to remember. I was taken myself blindfolded, locked up in a car in the night of civil war in Beirut. And during those kind of adventures, I was able to free myself and to take away with me from captivity American, British, and German hostages over a period of different months. That meant, in particular, as you can imagine, that I was taken more than once. I did not do diplomacy in the desk. I did not do diplomacy on the great halls of the UN. I actually did diplomacy with results, not with the blah blah and not with the pieces of paper, in the real theater of life. I took home 8 American hostages, which had been kept there, the longest one 5 years, 3 British hostages and 2 German hostages. In the meantime, and during this operation, I was myself taken 4 times, blindfolded, locked up in the back of a car, and eventually talked so much that they let me go because they couldn't take anymore. I mention this because that is the background of what I will tell you. And what I will tell you is that even institutional organizations like the UN and similar, and governments, do have a human face, do have an individual face, and the most difficult problem of the institution is that by the time they are created, they are partially already old. Why? Because what happens in the real theater of life changes every day. I did not plan to be taken myself hostage. It just happened. And I had to have a boss who gave me incredible amount of freedom to decide and to play in the game of states and make my decision even without talking to him, because I could not talk to him, especially when I was blindfolded and locked up in the back of a car. It was then that I discovered that there are somebody who makes cars in Europe called Mercedes-Benz. You may have heard of them. So one of my first times when I was taken, I was locked up in the boot of a car. And when I was lucky enough to survive and come back, the first time, because this happened more than once, I wrote to Mercedes-Benz and I said, would you stop writing that you produce big cars? I was on the boot of your cars, and it's not big at all. Yeah, okay, I'm happen to be 6'3" or so that's a bit too big for them. The point was, and I wanted to confirm, to mention to these events, I also dealt with another individual who was not very kind. You may have heard, though you're very young, of a man called Saddam Hussein. He was the dictator of Iraq for a long time, and he was actually fighting a war at the time against the Iranians, their neighbors, a war which lasted 8 years. What you may not know is that when that war that you will read in the books ended in 1988, it did not end because of an agreement between 2 countries, namely Iran and Iraq. It ended because Saddam Hussein, who was winning the war, was told in 4 days, no more money. If you look at the New York Times of the 7th of August, 1988, you will read on the first page the following title or subtitle. The Iranian and the Iraqis were fighting each other, and the New York Times on a Sunday, 7th of August, 1988, came out with the title on the first page saying, Iraqi delegation left New York. Peace talks therefore collapse, war will continue. The war ended at 1 p.m. Monday, 8th of August, 1988, the day after. No Iraqis around, no need. Who told you that in order to make peace between two combatants, you have to have the two combatants around? Well, probably those who have never ended a war. I did. I had to pay a price, though, because Saddam Hussein, within a short, brief period of time, made it clear that I was on his hit list. And I remained in the hit list of Saddam Hussein until his death in 2005. But not just in Iraq, not just in his country. His decree ran also in every neighboring country of Iraq, so much so that I was given a paper one day in the years which followed indicating exactly that. So what kind of understanding did I have of the UN? I had the understanding that institutions like men and women do age. And what the UN was doing or could have done in 1948 or 1956 could not do later. By the same token, that when I was 21, I could ride a marathon, and when I was 61, I could not run a marathon anymore. It's nothing special. It's just something logical. But we have this illusion, the illusion that the institution provide the answer. Forget it. They never do. Answers as going to war can only come from the individual human beings. In that process, I learned so much about myself as well. The first time I was taken blindfolded, locked up in a car, it was 1 o'clock in the morning in Beirut at war. Chances of coming out of that boot of the car and surviving the war in Beirut, well, if I'm a betting man, I would have said not much. But I'm here. But I'm here. They took me to meet two individuals, God knows where. To this day, I don't know where. And in front of me, when my mask was taken off, I saw two individuals with their mask. And they asked me, why do you risk your life to save someone who is not a member of your tribe? The question was difficult for two reasons at least, or two different levels. First of all, the straightforward answer did not have to be stupid. And second is what would follow my answer. And number three, three things, is how do I explain this to somebody who does not know my entire life history? I don't know theirs. How can I explain something without being misunderstood? This is what I said to my captor. He was sitting here with his colleague, both masked. Behind me, there were 8 individual machine guns, which were recharging. It's a very famous trick in this to scare people. They recharge to make you, to scare you. What is that? I mean, kids game, right? And of course, most importantly, I had no idea where I was. Was I in Syria? Was I in Beirut? Was I in Lebanon? So he asked me, why do I risk my life to save another man's life? The diplomacy I've learned in 3 different universities where my degrees come in 3 different countries did not help me. And I said to myself, you have to be really careful, not so much on the words, but what you are trying to convey, because we come from different cultures, we come from different human history, so what do I convey? And I said to him, because I like to pay forward. Now, the very expression to pay forward is clear to you in English today. As you understand by now, English is not my mother tongue, nor was the mother tongue of my interlocutors. So I say, whatever I say, how will it be understood? And so I tried to explain to him what I meant, and I said, I like to pay forward. This is how I build my life. And I said, I guess, and this was a guess, which had a danger, I guess you have a son. And then he stood up from his chair, mask, and said, how do you know I have a son? It's just a guess. And then he sat down. I said, my God, the first step is done. And I said to him, okay, you have a son, I have a son. I tell you why I risk my life to say somebody I don't even know today. Because 20 years from now, your son and my son may meet. And the life of my son may be in the hands of your son. So what I do today here, or tonight here actually, is I pay forward. I pay in advance so that my son will receive the benefit of the generosity of your son. That, my friends, is the core of the diplomacy that brought home American, German, and British hostages in the late 80s and in the early 90s. So there was no books, there was no institution, and here I come now to hit the institutions a little bit. I have to, do I? There was no institution. There was what I called, that sometime when we speak about institution, we forget that we are dealing with individuals. And when you forget that, you can as well go home, because you're talking about buildings, articles on the newspaper, and that's it. You're not talking about real life. I don't deny to you that I was gambling. But life is a gamble. Do I know if I will be alive tomorrow? Do I know if going out of this building I will not be hit by a car? No, I don't. So the entire construction of speaking about diplomacy and war and peace, the whole construction of institution has to be put in its own right place. Which brings me to a practical comment for you. Could I have done that operation and others, with Saddam Hussein and others, if I had not had the kind of boss I had, which gave me tremendous freedom of movement, which gave me credibility, which said to me whenever I went for a mission, just promise me you'll do your best to come back alive. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't tell me what to do. Yes, we had a Security Council resolution, which was as légère as the wind. Fine. They write on a piece of paper a resolution which maybe cannot be implemented, so what it is? Nothing. But is it useful? Yes, it is still useful. I'm not denying the significance of institutions, but give to them the right weight. Institutions are useful because they allow people who disagree to talk to each other. Do they bring results? I don't think so. The results will only come from the individuals who will read and interpret the reality of their situation in that given moment in time and history in a way which will produce tomorrow morning a different results. I did not ask for any favor, any recompensation or nothing. And one day, from a president of a big country, I received a letter saying, I give you my citizenship. I said, I never asked for it. And I gently returned it back. I didn't ask. I don't want to be kind of bought in the wrong way, so to speak. In other words, I carry with me not only what I learned by the incredible boss I had at the UN, who gave me the ability to be who I was, something institutions usually forbid to individuals. They don't allow to be who you are. They give you the instructions, they give you the routes to follow, and you go. Well, my good luck was that in every operation I did, and to do either with Afghanistan, or with Iran, or with Iraq, or with Lebanon, I had a great privilege. I was bloody lonely. But it's not bad. Not bad. It gives you tremendous advantages, if you can take them. So institutions are a tool which has got to be such that it allows the individual to use the tidbits of it to do what is required at that time, at that moment, in that place, to do the job of peacemaker, of conflict resolution maker, or hostage-freer. Per se, what is written does not produce anything. A piece of paper never produces anything unless it is implemented in some way. Implementation is all the trick, and implementation can be different. You can have the same sentence, and I can implement it in different ways. Which brings me again down to the institution. Why do institutions not always work in that way? Because those who are in charge of institutions sometimes, they don't even know what they're talking about. They just want to have a position, they would have the pictures, they want to have the salary, but they don't really know because they've never done the job, and they don't have the humility to say, let me learn. Let me learn. Do you think that you could have ended World War I like you did World War II? Of course not. Is that so difficult to understand? Of course not. Of course not. I met individuals who I would like not to meet ever again in my life, and they came from all different countries. Why? Because human beings can be good and bad. It doesn't matter where they live. It doesn't matter what place of worship they frequent. It doesn't matter. What matters is how your brain and your upbringing and your mind are prepared to read what is put in front of you. I can tell you that I did have some problems in an institution because my behavior was a behavior that can be said now very openly. I was not under control. I know that. But my boss was intelligent enough to understand I'm not big because I control Picco. I'm big because this institution works. So it did not have a complex of inferiority. 90% of the leaders of this world have complex of inferiority. Don't expect anything from them. That's basically what it is. They want to feel Mighty Mouse, right? That's what it is. That's what it is. When they kidnap us, masked in their own territory, with no chance for me to get out if they didn't want, ask me, why do you do this? I said, because of your son and my son. I said, we never heard that. Of course not. I'm glad. I'm glad. Institutions do not work because the way you write it or because they have a good boss. They work on the heart and mind of those who run them. And if the heart and minds are not enough to understand that today we are this day, and this day has never happened before, not yesterday, not 10 years ago, never happened before, then you just have a machine that produces pieces of paper and nothing else. And nothing else. When this leader of the organization will leave, ask him, how many lives have you saved? I mean, provable, name and last name, not just blah, blah. When the previous left, ask him, how many lives have you saved? I measure that way. You may have a different measurement, which is fine. How many wars have you ended? Now, this is the way to prove organizations, institutions, and governments, which are one and the same. You find incredible individuals whose name you may not even know, who have just put a little tidbit of salt there where it is needed. These are the individuals you want to be. These are the individuals who make history and change the world. The rest, they want to have a big salary, be paid in the UN building down in New York City, fine. Who will remember them? Nobody. Do you want to be remembered? Maybe not, which is actually even better. The question is, will somebody in the new generation, just one or two, recall and say, oh, that guy is alive because some other guy gave him a hand that nobody else gave. And that is what life is all about. It's not just institution. That's what life is all about. Yes, I did go, believe me. I went to all these universities around the world. I have 4 degrees from 4 different countries in 4 different universities. Did they make me more brilliant? Well, maybe they made me think, for sure. But the question remains, when it was asked for me, in order for this situation to be resolved, we have to take you. They told me. I had a choice. I was not taken hostage by Hezbollah because they wanted to. They asked me. You will take the West, you can have a chance if we take you. I accepted to be taken without telling my boss, because if I had taken my boss, I would accept to be taken. He would have said, no, you can't because you have a family, you have children. And he would forbid me. That is what the future is all about. An increased role of individuals and a decreasing role in the structures to function, because like a car, you need 4 wheels to drive, of course, but you need a driver. Institutions are like a car. The car by itself does not move. You need a driver. The question is, nobody teaches you how to make peace or to save human lives. You've got to learn it tomorrow morning when you get up at the crack of dawn and say, what do I do today? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Did I have a great run in my 25 years at the UN or whatever? Oh, the greatest run of my life. The greatest run of my life. I did what I thought was right. I did what I thought would work, and it bloody did work. So this is, I think, the new era we are entering, even more so because, in a way, we are more people than we ever had been in this world. And therefore, we have a panoply of individuals, of mind and hearts, to fish from, where we can find those who will have the wisdom, the courage, or the folly as well, to write a new page of history. But expect not from a wall or from an institution to give you a new piece of history. The institution at best is a tool. And tools to produce results have got to be manipulated and used. So when I walked out the UN many years ago, I regretted it because it had given me the run of my life. So the UN was grand for me. But was grand for me because I had a boss who said to me, this is the tool we have, go and use it. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't even know where I was geographically. Geographically, what country I was, he didn't know. And I knew, if I told him, he would have said, don't do it. So we had an understanding. So he was great, himself was grand, because he knew not to push me, because if he had pushed me too much to be a good bureaucrat, we would not have done what we've done, neither with Saddam Hussein, nor with the hostages in the Middle East, nor with the Afghan reality and other things. So it was fascinating that in all this running of my crazy life, I cannot complain about what I did outside my family. But I continued to ask myself, what price did your children pay for what you did? I don't have the answer to the question, but I think about it every day, and it's not a nice answer. My children paid. Was it that worth it? I do not know. I think this is the question for which I have no answer. This is the question where the Almighty will tell me one day, I suppose, if I meet him. Thank you. Shall we talk?
Great. Thank you very, very much for an excellent presentation. I'm sure you have inspired and provoked many questions and comments. Please don't hesitate. As always, if you could raise your hand and briefly introduce yourself, also with your name and the country that you're from. Who would like to go first? Yes. Okay. And use the microphone too if you can. Yeah.
I'm a researcher of international relations. I'm doing my PhD in international relations from Pakistan.
Your name?
My name is Zulfikar Ali. I have a question, like when Sir says that institutions are good because those who run are good. I do not agree with this notion, because in my life when I study the book or when I research on the articles, I find out that what if their salaries come from the one who have the veto powers? No matter how good they are, but they are bound to the forces who have the veto power because they control the budget. Independence of the UNO from the veto power is the basic theme and the basic fundamental that has to be achieved. In the humanitarian crisis of Kosovo or in the Syria, that was the veto power that bars the UNO to not take an action in Syria or in Kosovo. That might be the other ways that how the independence of UNO can be achieved. There are many ways, like imposing the international postal tax, imposing the international tax on the communication which the people uses, international airline that crosses the international zones, international ships that crosses the international sea, international tax on the space shuttles. So the basic theme is not that the human is good, so the outcoming will be good. Like it was Karl Marx says that if the economy is good, then the human which thinks good will be in a nicer way. But if the economy is bad, so it will be a total devastation. So it's not the question that the people are good, so they'll be delivering good. UNO is bound to that, those who have the veto power, and they implement their choices on that.
Right. Let me start from the last sentence you just uttered. It's based on the veto power.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree only halfway with you. The UN could do things even without the veto, even with the veto power, and my very activity was a proof of that. In other words, there were some cases where you don't have to go to the Security Council. There are some initiatives you can take without going to the Security Council, and therefore, if you don't go to the Security Council, the veto power doesn't even show up. So that is, in general, what you're saying is correct. In reality, there are situations where you don't need a veto. Now, let me ask you. You're very young, but you remember there was a war between Iran and Iraq. There was no veto power for the Iran-Iraq war that stopped anybody from doing anything. And it was a war, a regular war between two member states. So the theoretical statement you made is correct in most cases, but not in every case. And even less so as we proceed ahead in time, because don't forget that that particular structure of the UN was built at the moment in time when, of course, let's forget about World War II, but when the new seed of the world were the two pillars of the East and the West world, the Soviet Union and the United States. So that was the reason. Then when you have the Soviet Union collapses and disappears, the raison d'etre of that very reason disappears as well. And I know it was not the only one, but it was the fundamental one. So I agree with you that you can make that point, but I can say there is a time limit to the point, and there is definitely also a limit in the other context. Many Secretary Generals refused to enter the reality of war and peace without a blessing from the Security Council, but not everybody. And so, yes, you could operate even without a veto power if you were, kind of good enough to move in some situations where you could move as a Secretary General without going to the Security Council. And that's exactly what happened with the Iran-Iraq war. Iran-Iraq war, the Security Council did not have a word to say. Did not utter one word at the end when it ended. They didn't even know it was going to end. That's why I mentioned to you the New York Times articles on that famous August of 1988. So, and even if the veto power is there, everybody and everything evolves. Nothing remains the same. The evolution is continuous. It's continuous in our body, continuous in our mind. There's now I'm stupid, you understand? And it continues in society. That's what it is. That's what it is. If I told my boss and I followed the rules, I would have had to tell him. He was the Secretary General of the UN because I worked with him literally 8 yards from his office. I would have had to tell him. They asked me if they can take me hostage, the Hezbollah. He would have said, "Are you nuts? Of course not." So what did I do? Why put him in front of this doubt, of this question? I didn't tell him. I just happened to have done it without telling him. So there are ways that you can go through. Yes, there are risks to take. The question is, what do we believe in? Do we believe in the bureaucracy, or do we believe in what our mind and heart tells us? And there we go. You know what did I pay for that? Of course. You know why I paid for that? I paid for that because the institution punished me. I don't have a pension from the UN, though I spent decades there, because that's the way they made me pay. I did things by myself, and I didn't get a pension. You have to make a deal. How do you want your life? You decide. Take your pick. I lost my pension, but I won my children. I won what I did. I wrote my story. I can tell a story and tell the tale and say, well, it was not too bad. It was not too bad. But to imagine on top of that, that we have an organization like the UN set up in 1948, and which we have not really shapen up enough yet to move, in some cases. I mean, do you realize that the organization like the UN today cannot deal with the problems in the Middle East because we cannot deal basically with non-actors, with non-state actors. So the nation state is a nation state. It's king or queen, whatever you want to call it. Today, the problem we have are not with the nation states. Пожалуйста, as they say in Moscow. I don't speak Russian. Please. Yes, sir.
My name is Jose, French and US citizen. So I did my master's and my thesis in international relations with the American Military Academy. So my question to you is, I know you talked about the role of the individuals, and I thought it was really interesting being a high-rank official within the United Nations. So looking at the aftermath of the Second World War and also the failure of the League of Nations, I know the United Nations really embarked on a big task, preserving security and protecting civil rights of the individuals and pursuing and preserving solidarity and prosperity. So do you think the United Nations value the role of the individual in this process of preserving security and peace for the society and human dignity for all? And if yes, why? And if no, why and how?
I think the United Nations is still very valuable. The question is that, like all of us, when we were 18, are no longer what we were when we were 48, for the organization is the same thing. And what has been a difficulty for the organization, not only the UN, is exactly that many take the institution as if it was a complete masterpiece of work, and what the United Nations did in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, whatever, is a good indication of what it can do today or tomorrow. That is wrong. That is wrong. The United Nations did something in those years because of a particular situation. We had a Cold War, which made things so much easier in a way, and we had a different time and place in the world economy. So you had the groups of people who did not even react to some realities of the politics of the 60s because they did not even have to eat, let alone creating a new system in their own country, in their own region. So what I'm saying is, like everything else, the United Nations, it was an incredible enterprise. Whoever invented it in 48 after World War II must have been a genius who looked forward, because in 48 the picture of the bipolar world was just emerging, was not completely clear, was just emerging. And now I think what we need to people who look at the reality of the world and say the organization has to be adjusted in a different way. And don't expect, as when you have a tool. Let's say you have a hammer. The hammer is here. The hammer is a good hammer? Yes. But unless you use it, it's not a good hammer. The tool per se is not good because it exists. The tool is good when it is used and produces results. And the institutions are the same. I mean, why do you have all kind of changes in the reality of nation states in the last 10 years or 20 years? Because of the same reason. Just because we have a model of a nation state, it doesn't mean it is the gospel, if you're a Christian, or the Torah, whatever you want to call it. So I'm not saying that I can give you the answer to all this thing. I just walked the streets of this world. I saw what was not working. And I had the good fortune of having a boss who gave me freedom to maneuver. Remember, a boss who does not give freedom to maneuver to his own people is somebody who is afraid of being mistaken, of being wrong, or is afraid of himself. Because a boss who is actually confident in himself will take this and say, go fly the kite and win. He will not ask how many commas are here. This is the difference between great leaders and non-leaders. The others are just there for their own aggrandissement, for their own pension, for their own whatever. There's nothing wrong. Not that you do anything wrong, but don't claim to me that you are a political leader. That's what I'm saying. I don't say it's fine, wrong. Maybe it's right. Maybe you want to do this. Maybe your objective is the pension. And you couldn't give a damn about what the organization do. If that is the case, fine, we speak a different language. You go this way, I go this way. I had the run of my life. Did I pay very heavily for this? Yeah, profoundly. I paid a tremendous, unbearable price. I paid a price with my family, I paid a sum with my children. They were terrified that I was not to be found. Is that a cost? It's a tremendous cost. It's a tremendous cost. Was I wrong in paying the cost? Yes, I was. Vis-à-vis my children, I was wrong. We win one, and we may lose on the other side. They're not perfect solution to anything. But what is certainly not to be forgotten is that when we have in front of us a tool, a machine made in 1948, we may wish to check it out and see if the machine keeps working. And that requires ability on the part of those who look. And the only one who has this ability is the human individual. And that is why my confidence in the individual paradoxically remains very, very high. But you know, it has to be prefaced by everything I just mentioned to you. You know, I risk my life so that your son will save the life of my son 20 years from now, 30 years from now, maybe never. This was the second most wanted man on this face of the earth. When he was eventually captured, the ransom paid for him was humongous. He was my interlocutor, not someone very used to deal with diplomacy or to speak the diplomatic language. The operation to kill him costed one particular government $8 million to kill one man who was my interlocutor to save a few years earlier, a number of individuals. That is the truth. Everything else is the picture that we paint. We put red here, yellow here, fine, nothing wrong. Maybe we can even like to look at it. Oh, please, I'm so sorry.
Final question.
Thank you very much for presentation. I'm Tabriz Jafarov from Azerbaijan. I have a question about the resolution of the UN Security Council that we have some resolutions is implementing but some resolutions we have that is not implementing. Yeah. And in my opinion, this is not great position and great situation. And how do you think about it, and what is your experience about this? And how do you think that all the UN Resolutions Council we have, and these resolutions is implementing or not implementing, and not implementing, why? Thank you very much.
The rough answer to your question and the bad answer to your question would be that what you just described is the proof of the pudding that the system is broken. If the system, in this case, the system of the UN was not broken, every resolution should be implemented. So if it is not, something is broken. Now, I'm not going to the extreme to say that, but this would be the immediate answer to what you're asking. Resolutions were envisaged to receive the obedience, so to speak, of every member state. It's not done. So we're talking about a different reality. So this is, if we take the extreme position is the system is broken. If you have a resolution that is not implemented, when it becomes a member of the UN, says, I swear that I will follow the resolutions, the system is broken, as simple as that. If the system is broken, either you change it or you don't care. Period. There is nothing different. Now, I'm a bit violent in this presentation, I agree. But let me add you. whatever I tell you, I tested and worked on my own skin. I'm not telling a theory of my life, I'm telling you my life. So I can say this very openly. The system is broken. Clearly the system is broken. Because what we have entered a situation where, and here we go into a really explosive statement I will make, that I think that your generation and the new one to come will start re-examining the concept of the nation state. Not to abolish it, to re-examine how it interrelates to everything else. The United Nations was invented after World War II, where nation state had been destroyed by the most incredible war, an impossible war ever fought on this planet. And so what was invented was something which fit perfectly well the timing and the reality of the bipolar world. Now, we are facing bipolarity. We must be kidding. There are so many polls around this world these days that to speak about bipolarity makes me laugh. The world has changed, and we don't change the key institution, which is supposed to, in a way, give general guidance for how we live together in this world, which is quite populated. I think one should look at it. But who has the courage to say we should review the United Nations Charter? If you find him, let me know. Not because it is anything dramatic, just I'm curious to see, it's a different world. It's a different world. This morning I was listening to somebody explaining to me, or explain to me, to other colleagues, that maybe what is needed now is a reality where we need more states, not less. So instead of having the number of states which are there already, maybe we should cut into pieces many more and to make more states. Was his opinion? I'll give it to you as I got it.
Let's take maybe a final question, because we're over time, but this is such a great speaker, I don't want to miss the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Valbona Vostrake, I come from Kosovo, and talking about resolution, definitely curious to know, what do you think about this famous resolution 1244 of the UN Security Council for Kosovo? I definitely will appreciate your opinion.
You mean
and I want to congratulate you also, and thank you for sharing your experience with us at the same time.
I have to say that I'm not up to date. Tell me about the Kosovo resolution.
Well, actually, this resolution 1244 is something that has, first of all, it's a resolution that has settled Kosovo. At the point of the time, it is established with former Yugoslav Republic at the point of the time. Meantime, what has happened is there are few realities that have happened on the ground. The resolution remains the same. You have Yugoslav republics that have dispersed. You have Union of Serbia and Montenegro that has happened at the later stage. Then you have disperse of this union where you have Republic of Montenegro became independent meantime. And then you had, after so many negotiations and discussions about the status of Kosovo, after all the resources have been basically used and reused, you had the proclamation of the Republic of Kosovo. What we are having on the ground is three realities that have superseded one another, but the paper remains the same. How do you see this? Because for us in Kosovo, mission of the UN has been there as has been slowly, symbolically it is there, but in practice it makes no sense.
Well, I don't think that I'm equipped to answer your question, and this is not just trying to evade it. I just do not know all the updates that you have just given to me. And I think what you're telling me is of a reality where basically the voices of more and more individuals or group of individuals wants to be heard. History is moving more and more in the direction not of a big conglomerate, which one king at the top, but is moving in direction of more and more voices. And this is my answer to what you're saying. More voices are probably what we should expect in the future.
And if I may add also, the reporting that is made on a regular basis from Kosovo, where the situation basically is presented to the world, for me is a little bit like time-consuming first of all, for the agenda, because if you are reporting that the stolen cows of Serbs and Albanians, because we have come to that kind of level of reporting, we are reporting stolen cows now. I mean, this is what has remained to be reported from the ground.
You see, I will not comment on what I do not know, to be honest. I've learned that a long time ago. But thank you for telling me.
Thank you in any case.
All right, and now the final question. You're a very popular speaker, and then we'll continue. But, please.
Sorry about that. I'm cutting into my own time, so it's fine.
This is the most important. That's why I want to
Sergio Bernadze from Georgia. Mr. Picco, you're considered to be one of the best hostage negotiators. That's what we read about you. What would be the three things you would say are crucially important for the hostage negotiators? We've heard your story, and we know, but if you can just, extract three important things to keep in mind. Thank you.
My experience with hostage negotiator is that if you try to compare one to the other, you make a mistake. I mean, we have really different cases, and the different cases cannot be compared. So to have a formula for all of them, I don't think it's possible. The first reason why this is not possible, and the most important reason, is that you have to find a negotiator who is prepared to give his life for it, and that you cannot put in a piece of paper. Because the moment you put it, his life is lost already. So I think every case is a different case. So hostage negotiation is I've been involved in hostage negotiation even very recently, and every case is so bloody different. To make to prepare a page with all the do and don'ts doesn't work. You live a day in the life of somebody who is 17 is different from the day of somebody who is 47. That's my answer to you. It's not possible to have a formula for hostage negotiation. Impossible. It is very, very different. I've been asked even today about this hostage thing, but every case is a case. You have to take it on as it is. So I don't think we can have a formula for all of them, no. No, impossible in my view. Just to show how good I am. I've been invited to go to see a government in a couple of weeks about hostage negotiation. I will go, but every case is special. You know why? Because every case has to do with a different human being. And with all due respect to the group that we are as human beings, every case of each of us is different. So I don't have all the answers. I wish I had, but I don't. So thank you so very much.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, let's please express our sincere gratitude to the former Undersecretary General of the United Nations.